Hello, class. My name is Edward Stamey, and this is my video on From Monster to Martyr, re-representing of Mary Dyer by Miles and G. This is a story of Mary Dyer's convictions of wanting to equal religious rights in the colonies and how she was executed by the Puritans for speaking out outlandishly, wanting to have equal rights as men to be able to read the Bible and be able to preach the Bible, and converting from being a Puritan to a Quaker. Her story begins with Anne Hutchinson, who was banished from Massachusetts for kind of the same thing. Her and Anne Hutchinson's were friends, and Mary Dyer was actually one of the followers of Anne Hutchinson. A little background on the Puritans. The Puritans came to the colony to escape persecution from the English government on matters of religious freedom. Um, but when the Puritans came and settled in Massachusetts, they slowly started to adopt laws that would persecute other religions, people who would come into Massachusetts who are unwilling to convert to the Puritan religion. Um, Mary Dyer was one of the people that came into Massachusetts to escape religious persecution in England. She was really outspoken on her religious convictions. She felt that women should be able to read the Bible and speak the Word of God as well. But the Puritans didn't see it that way. For the most part, she stayed unheard of until 1637, after the death of her newborn child. John Winthrop, who really didn't like Mary Dyer because she had a following, wrote a short story on a monstrous birth describing what Mary Dyer's stillborn child looked like after its death. Now, nobody knows if John Winthrop's description was accurate or if it was made up to discredit Mary Dyer among the rest of the Puritan community, but it did have some effect on her reputation during this time. Um, John Winthrop also used Mary Dyer's deceased infant as evidence against her for heresy, showing that she was not a pure woman and God was punishing her for her wicked ways. The Puritan court found Mary Dyer guilty of heresy, and at this time she was banished from Massachusetts, where she would go to Rhode Island and stay there until 1652, when she would go back to England. Now, she stayed in England for a little while, where she would eventually become a Quaker. Then she would return back to Massachusetts in 1657 to rejoin her family in Rhode Island. But when she arrived in Boston, Massachusetts, she was actually arrested along with two other Quakers that were there on the ship with her. And they arrested her under the Puritan law of the Curse sect, where the Puritans had this belief that they were God's chosen children and nobody can be in there but God's chosen children. While she was in prison, she wrote two letters to the Massachusetts court explaining to the courts that, like the Puritans, Quakers were also looking to live in a place of freedom of religion and free of religious persecution. These letters would have some effect on the courts, but around that time, because she was spared from the gallows in 1657, where she went back to Rhode Island amongst her family. During that time, she would continue to advocate for the religious rights for the Quakers in Massachusetts. This would go on until 1660, when she returned to Massachusetts for the third and final time. There, she would be arrested again, and during her trial, she was asked if she thought herself as a prophet of God. And her response was, "I only speak the words that God gives me." She was sentenced to death by hanging and was hung on June 1st, 1660, in Boston Common. Now, the Puritan council thought that Mary Dyer's death would be the end all of Quakers trying to come to Massachusetts for religious freedom. But it had the opposite effect. The people of Massachusetts were getting tired of the Puritan leaders hanging men just for the crimes of being a Quaker. They remembered the times when they were in England where they were trying to escape the same persecution that the Quakers are now facing. And when Mary Dyer got hung, it sent a huge shockwave through Massachusetts because Mary Dyer was the first woman to be hung in Massachusetts just for being a Quaker. Uh, this type of martyrism that Mary Dyer faced would cause the Massachusetts government to rethink their laws and reset them and actually become a more accepting place of other religions. Thank you.